The following took place, as all the stories will today, in Onslow County. This particular story was reported to have happened in October 2010 and was reported by an active Marine at that time. I was deer hunting off Highway 24 near Roadstown, North Carolina, right outside of Jacksonville, North Carolina. I'd been in my stand since around 3 that afternoon. It was close to dark, and I saw a deer walking along the edge of the clearing I was in. It kept looking in the woods like it was curious or something. The deer got closer, and I took my shot. When I did, it took off running and hit some brush and fell down. I waited about 30 minutes, and it got dark. I got out of my stand and went to get the deer. I got my things together, and I started dragging my deer to my truck. That was about a quarter of a mile through a thick part of the woods that I'd been hunting in. I was carrying my rifle, backpack, the deer, and a flashlight in my mouth so I could pull the deer by its leg and hold my rifle and backpack straps. After walking through the thick part of woods, it was a straight shot directly to my truck. I dropped the deer's leg to get situated and get myself all together to continue my walk out. When I looked up with my light still in my mouth, I saw two glowing eyes looking back at me. They looked wider than any animal I've ever seen at night, and I've been hunting all my life. I've seen everything from deer to coyote to bear. Those sets of eyes were about my height. I'm about 5'10". The trail I was on went slightly downhill. It stared at me long enough for me to put my rifle and backpack down. I had a 9mm Glock with me, and I pulled it out. I shot once into the ground next to me to get whatever that was to get off the trail I was on. It didn't move. It didn't flinch. It just simply looked to its left and then looked back at me. I looked down to take a knee because I was getting worried. I got down on my knee, I looked back up, and he walked off to his left into some of the thickest woods I've ever seen. I grabbed the deer and continued dragging it toward my truck. When I got to the spot where I thought I saw the eyes, I looked both sides of the trail, and I could smell a musty, foul odor. And where it had walked off the trail, tree limbs and trees were pushed over as if something huge had just barged right through the thicket. I went to the truck, cleaned the deer right out there in the woods. I just felt like something was watching me the whole time I was cleaning the deer. I left the rib cage and spine of the deer that I had cleaned out there, along with the hide. When I came back to that very same spot, the spine had been drug off about 300 yards from where I left it. It's just one of the strangest and creepiest nights I've ever had in the woods by myself. I was active duty at the time. Again in Onslow County, the following story was recorded in July of 1987, about 25 miles from Hampstead, about 15 miles off of US 421 on Highway 51. I never told this to anyone because I didn't want to hear the jokes. But anyway, here goes. This was mid-July 1987. I was heading toward the beach in my sports car, top down, music blasting. It was around 8:45 p.m., so it was still light, sort of like a dark dusk. I had my headlights on, cruising about 60 miles per hour, when I rounded the corner, and there, in the road, stood this really large, hairy thing. I slammed on brakes and swerved around it, but I must have glanced it because it bounced right over the passenger side of my car. I slid the car around and stopped where my headlights were about halfway on the thing. It got up and came at me. I was about 25 feet away from the thing, and the smell was horrible. It just hung in the air like a wet blanket. It was between 7 and 7.5 feet tall, reddish brown, matted looking hair. Its face was hairless, and he looked ticked. I put the car in reverse, backed up, threw the car in drive, and took off. As I was spinning around, I looked in the rearview mirror, and it was right on my car's rear end. I heard a really loud bang, and about that time, thankfully, my car caught traction and took off. I left the creature running down the road after me. I've never been so scared in all my life. After I got to my destination, I checked my car. The passenger rear quarter panel was dented in with hair all over it, and my rear spoiler was shattered where it had hit the rear of the car. I told my friends, family, the police, even the insurance people that I'd hit a stray cow. But it took weeks to get that smell off the outside of my car and on the inside. It's just a horrible smell like sewage or something. Anyway, I was 27 then. It's a long time ago. I've never been down that road since, and I'll drive way out of my way to keep from going down that road. And, you know, the thing, when it attacked me, it made this really strange growl or roar. Never heard anything like that before or since, and I don't want to. Our last story took place near Camp Lejeune on a Marine training exercise in February 2005 and was witnessed by at least 5 Marines. We were conducting Marine Corps training exercises. Our last training event was a mock war to apply what we had learned. So my squad was over on top of a hill overlooking Saddle. We were waiting for the enemy to come up the hill so we could engage them. But then we heard a noise from behind, so we turned around to see what it was. We thought it was a bear about 10 yards, but it seemed like it was taking a knee, so we just stared at it for about a minute. Then it got up onto its feet and started walking to our position. And we did nothing as it walked between our fighting holes, which were roughly about 15 feet apart. As it passed by us, it knew that we were there because it didn't take his eyes off of us, not once. He looked down directly at me as it passed by. Then he stopped about 15 feet away and he turned around, but not completely. He turned at his waist to look back, and then he just disappeared. Man, he was big, at least 7 foot tall. I mean, his body was muscular. It's the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life. We all saw it, and that odor was just horrible.